Right. Welcome everybody to another amazing session as part of the New Politics and Afrofuturism program. And for those of you who are hearing about this for the first time, the program is calling for Black radical imagination and pop culture as powerful vehicles for propelling progressive social justice narratives to mainstream audiences with a specific focus on Afrofuturism, like activism, culture, climate justice, along with political theory and practice. This program is brought to you by the wonderful, the University of the Underground. And again, for those of you who've been living under a rock and have not come across the University of the Underground, it is a free, pluralistic and transnational university based literally in the basement of nightclubs in headquarters in Amsterdam. Of course, due to the recent global events, and the program is all online. And the title of this lecture is a Q&A with none other than the wonderful Lisa-Kaindé. And for those of you who are not familiar with Lisa-Kaindé, you may know the band that she's part of called Ìbejì. And you're gonna have to forgive me, Lisa, I've completely butchered the pronunciation of the band. But Ìbejì is a French musical duo consisting of twin sisters, Lisa-Kaindé Diaz and Naomi Diaz. The duo sings in English, French, and Spanish, and Yoruba, which is a Nigerian language spoken in West Africa by their ancestors before being taken to Cuba in the 1700s. So they have got a host of amazing achievements. They've signed to Excel Recordings, and they were also, the twins appeared in a short film for Beyonce's album Lemonade, and the 2017 album Ash was nominated for IMPALA's European Album of the Year. And this is just a few of their accolades. Interesting enough, like their father was a famed Cuban percussionist named Angel Diaz, who has received a Grammy Award for his work with the Latin jazz band Irakere, and was also a member of Buena Vista Social Club Assemble. And honestly, they are phenomenal, and I encourage you all to check out their music if you've not already. And yes, welcome, Lisa. We're very humbled and excited for you to join us today. Just to kind of kick things off, how are you, and where are you currently? How have you been coping with everything that's been happening? I'll just take you off mute. Okay. It's okay, it happens to everyone.
Okay, can you hear me now? Yeah. I was gonna say it's so surreal to have someone reciting to you your bio. It's kind of it's kind of interesting what people kind of feel like would represent what I have been doing for the past 6 years and what my life is about. It's funny to find how people choose.
Yeah, I'm sure I didn't do it justice at all. So.
No, it did actually. It was actually really good. Thank you so much for doing this, and I'm really honored to be here. I'm really honored to talk to all of you. This is amazing. I've been good. I've been creating music, which is my happy place. I'm really lucky that my sister could come to London. I live in London. I'm in London at the moment, and our studio, our producer studio is in London. So we got to come here and create, which is what makes us the most happy, but also what makes us feel that we're doing something, what makes us feel hopeful, what makes us feel that, we're not just sitting around waiting for, the world to get better, but actually kind of putting prayers out there so that something happens. And it's what, helps our mental health and so, yeah, again, really, really grateful to be here.
Brilliant. Well, thank you.
And one important thing that we forgot to mention in your bio is you're also a board member of the University of the Underground.
Exactly.
So we're even more grateful for you to be here and to support us all along the way,
Yes.
On a daily basis. And actually, you don't know that, but we had our first wedding at the University of the Underground.
Oh my God, that's amazing.
I mean, this is something, everyone, it happened. The cohort from 2017, 2019, 2 students in there, they got married. I mean, you know, things happen in basements that you wouldn't even think about. But anyway, having said that, I can't wait to see how couples are gonna form online these days, like with the new court. I think, Chris, I don't know how you want to do this with Lisa-Kaindé with the Q&A. I know that the students had some questions, but then maybe you've
I
had
was
a
thinking, like, if Chris can, like, Chris has also got a set of questions. Chris will just lead it, and then of course we're going to open it up to everybody without a shadow of a doubt.
Yeah, the reason why I think Q&A are amazing is I can sit there and tell you everything that I think is important, but actually I realized that the few times I did that, people didn't get what they needed. And I feel like if you have any questions and you feel like I could help in any way to show you one of the ways to do things, I'm here, especially if it, especially if it has to do with, you know, identity and finding yourself and the creative process.
Definitely. Over to you, Chris.
Cool. Thank you, Majid and Nelly. Lisa, right, let's get down to it. I think before we go into a whole list of questions in terms of who are you and what does that mean and how people are developing their sense of identity and how they start to categorize themselves, if they categorize themselves at all. Majid was so nice in order to give you an introduction in your as a bio of what he felt that it would represent you. If you were to present your own bio, what would it say?
Oh, that's a really interesting thing. I think it would say I am a twin.
Okay.
And I'm making music with my twin. I think it would say I'm French Cuban, but I'm Afro-Latina.
Mm-hmm.
I think it would say that I try to create music that is from now, but that takes from the past. I think it would say that sentence that my dad always said. He used to say, listen to the old people, listen to old people, listen to the old musicians. And I really always incorporated that. And it would say that I'm a singer-songwriter. And really that right now I want to say, it would say I'm a friend too. That I'm a friend and I have family that I've chosen to, and how important that is.
Amazing. I mean, I think I always find it the best way to understand how someone wants to be seen is to ask them what they say about themselves. The best identity sometimes is what's reflected in the mirror, whether it's positive or negative. And I think with that being said, there is, of course, you are part of a group or a collective or duo in which people have come to know you. But within that group, there's so many things that I find out is intertwined in terms of identity, political identities, cultural accents, things that you may pull up on, pronunciations of certain words that spelt in one language, but pronounced in another. There's this connection between many different things. At this point, how do those different cultures or those different classifications work with you? How do they sit with you personally?
That is a really, really interesting question, and it would take hours to answer. But what I would say is, what you said is, it's interesting. How do you want people to see you? What makes you you? Those are questions that we have to answer if we are artists, and we have to answer them if we want to work on ourselves. But if we are artists, even more. Because you have to think, how do you want to be seen? What about you makes you unique? What about you makes it interesting for someone to actually take time of their lives to come to see you at a show, to even pay for a ticket? What about you makes you unique and makes you this individual that you are creating? Because I would say it's like, you know, RuPaul says you born naked and the rest is drag, but basically what he means is you perform yourself, you perform gender, you perform a lot of things. Performing it doesn't mean it's not you. I think performing it means, what will you define as, oh, this is what I'm going to present, right? What is those tiny things and details that you're going to present? And I think it shouldn't be one thing. It shouldn't be just I'm a woman. It shouldn't be just I'm mixed race or I'm Yoruba. It's what is interesting with Ibeyi is we never wanted to choose. We really always thought that every single thing that we were added was us. We are Cuban, and we are Afro-Latina, and we are French, and we are twins, and we are women, right? And we never wanted to be just one thing. And we always felt like the more we added, actually, the more we digged through our identity and added it to our music, and the best it represented us.
Absolutely.
Which is really complicated because we are in a world where you ask to choose. I mean, every single interview I do, half of the time they're like, but you're more French or you're more Cuban? You know, because you're more white or you're more black, right?
Absolutely.
They always will ask you to choose, and you don't have to. And I would say if you take that even in the politics of nowadays, where in America, you know, you're Black American. You can't be from Africa, you know, and America. They meant to choose. And I think that's part of the reason why when we play in America, we connect to the audience, because suddenly when they hear us not choose, right? They connect to that. And I had loads of people when I signed say, oh, I heard your music and it makes me, and I wonder where I am from, and I should actually, you know, find those roots back, dig, right?
Absolutely, yeah.
And accept both of those parts of me, because I'm all of that. And so I think with Ibeyi, it's always been one of our priority. And at first it was really unconscious because we never really thought about it. But then when success happens and when pressures happen, and, you know, when you have a team and you know, all of those things happen, it's super important to always remember that this is your guideline, that you don't have to choose, that all of these things are you, that you don't have to compromise that, your identity and who you are. But it's a long path and it's difficult, and also it's forever changing. And that's also something no one tells you.
Absolutely. I think you've touched on something really important, because the reason I asked that question is I find that it's better to ask how somebody sits within themselves in order to, rather than start presuming in which way they identify. Particularly as, you know, human beings are migrant people. They're migrant species. We move around. The idea of sticking in one place forever is very, very alien, as long as you trace back the roots of human civilization. We moved in order to allow places to replenish and to become enriched. And I think this is where it reminds me of a TED talk by Thais Selassie, on where she wrote, where she spoke about, don't ask where I'm from, ask where I'm local. Where do people know you? Where do you have the connections? Where do you have a sense of belonging? Where do you have a sense of depth and roots and origin? Cultures migrate, customs migrate. And these are the things that I find that I think is really important. And to be honest, the things that I think you would have a lot more license to talk about beyond, you know, the politics of of classifications or categories. I think that is, I believe that is an issue of politics and bureaucracy. You know, are you this? You can get that. Oh, we want to sell you. We want to, you know, put you in this market. Therefore, we need to sell this part of you more. And just like you, I remember many artists that have that crossed into all the way back when you date to the evolution of rock music and jazz, even to some of the most contemporary musicians. I mean, to this day, no one can categorize Prince. No one can tell me what genre this man say. You just say he is music and you leave it there. It also reminds me of artists like Van Hunt, who blew up in one genre, but then because of a music industry kind of formats, they didn't know how to sell him or how to promote him. Rather than talking about the substance, they talked about the shell, the casing. And I think this is something where, with this particular program, I really want people to start to understand in terms of what are we personifying and how do they exist and how do we navigate in those realms. So particularly with this program, with the New Politics and Afrofuturisms, what the full-time students are working with is that they are producing a piece of work that, or a series of pieces of work that speaks to the idea of where human beings and the environment thrive. simultaneously. In a very naive sense, that can be looked at as, oh, that's idealistic, it can't happen. What does thriving even look like? And I think with that, we're trying to get the students, the full-time participants, researchers, and the visiting participants to think about this idea of what does luxury look like? What is considered as luxury? What is considered as a necessity? And also, where does human sacrifice come in? And where do we identify our role and how things should be? And I think, and with that comes with a specific skill of trying to build new worlds, trying to visualize things beyond what it is that we've grown up in. Me personally, I've lived in multiple countries on the continent as well as in the UK. So you've been to Ghana, Kenya, Yemen, Egypt, all these different, and you're seeing how different places live. And there's a different balance between people and environment, different relationships. You talk about your Yoruba culture there, and we had an amazing talk by an amazing woman called Muktara Yusuf, who spoke about the indigenous thought processes and the relationship to environment, and as the way that we engage. For example, if you're born with twins, how you might be named, things like this.
Yeah.
Right? So you understand what I'm saying, where we're understanding these elements, our relationship to our environment. And I think there's something that I think this is something that I would like to understand for you is, I'm sure very often people have asked you, what music do you make? And not just the music, but when the content of your music, what is the most important thing for you there? What are the elements that are most important, or that to come across, or for you to say, this is a successful piece of music, this is a great song because it has these key elements? What are those elements for you?
Okay, wait. So there was loads of interesting things. I'm just gonna tackle on loads of them because I think they might be super interesting.
Okay.
First one is the idea of where do you belong? If you ask me where do I belong, I would say next to people I love. I would say I belong to the sea. And if I use the idea of I belong next to people I love, I belong everywhere. Like actual land everywhere.
Global citizen.
Right? And if you take that idea that you belong everywhere, you just share with everywhere. You know what I mean? Learn from everywhere you can. I was gonna say take, but take is not the right word. Take means that take would kind of sound selfish. It's not take. Interact. Learn from, right? Learn from everywhere, because everywhere has something to give you, and you have something to give to everywhere. That is for sure. That's one of the things I've learned. And there's a type of vibrancy that you can connect to everywhere with anyone, that is full of power and beauty. And when we get to do that, it's just one of the most incredible things. And art does that. You know, you can be in Japan with people that you don't share a lot with, because I'm Latina. I'm so, you know, my culture is so extravagant and huge and blah, blah, blah. But then when you get them to sing to your songs, and you know, you get them to arrive to that frequency, and you arrive to theirs, it's one of the most incredible things you'll ever experience. And that's why I love music so much, because you get to belong, you know, anywhere you are, and it doesn't matter who you are, and suddenly your identity doesn't matter either, because you are at that frequency. And I think that was really if you ask me what is the most important element of music when I think this is a good song, is when I'm on stage and the song gets everybody to that frequency. That is the best song. And if you ask me what is the most important, is if it comes from here, if it's felt, if it comes from your guts, if it's full of your energy, if it says something, what do you want to say? If it says something that you mean, because beauty is important, but beauty ain't it. I can look at something beautiful and think, oh, that's great. But if it doesn't have an impact on me, except, oh, great, then is it that important? You know what I mean?
Yeah,
and those
absolutely.
are the hardest songs. I mean, in terms of songs, that's the hardest art to make, because that's the art that will take also so much energy. Pain. You were talking about thriving. Thriving doesn't come without sacrifice and pain. Unfortunately, I wish it did. but it doesn't. And so sometimes those songs, that frequency comes also with so much hard work, so much pain, so much digging within yourself, which is painful. It's not fun. It's not always fun. Sometimes it is. Don't get me wrong. Sometimes it is. But that digging, if you go really to like, if you face really those things that you don't like about yourself, but actually make a song out of it, and that talks to people, and that makes everybody kind of high at the same time, that is, I mean, you find it. That's paradise. That's the new world, isn't it?
Right.
That's the world you created. So that's the thing. And I also wanted to say, when you said how to build a new world, I'm convinced, dream yourself. You guys had a class from Aditi, which I made a class with Tiger, by the way. Tiger, I saw you send a little message. I don't know where you are because there's so much people in here, but
I'm here.
I love you.
I love you too.
So, Lisa, you've got on mute again.
Oh, sorry.
There you go.
Yeah, I was saying I love you too. I love you, Tiger. I was going to say, we did this class with Tiger, with Aditi, who did a class for you. And at the end of the class, I was trying to get together what was the most important thing for me that I got from this class. Not only, obviously, I got so much. I mean, I can't tell you so much. But one of the most important things I got from this class is I realized how important dreaming is. Dreaming yourself, dreaming this new world, you know, prophesize it, talk about it, make it, you know what I mean? We are said, oh, sorry, I just 3 seconds more and then I'll let you talk. I'm so sorry, I love talking. I was going to say, we are convincing people that after, 8 years old, you're not supposed to dream because it's childish, because it's dumb, because it's not capitalism, like what comes from it. But actually it's not true. A lot comes from it. A lot comes from dreaming yourself into like this vision that you have for yourself. And not only a lot comes from it, but it's what will build you. It's what will make you. It's what will make you this person that you want to be. So yeah.
Amazing.
Prophesize.
I like it. On that note, I'm going to stick with that word prophesying and prophesize and prophesying as a verb at this point. We have a question from D who wrote. I'm just going to read it out just so we can go through it, and then I'll ask you to elaborate further if necessary. So
Chris,
she wrote.
Chris, maybe it's a good occasion for them to talk directly to Lisa-Kaindé, no?
Okay, sure. Do you have Did you have the document in front of you?
Yeah,
Me?
No,
D.
D.
You, Nelly. That's hold on.
No, I just think D it would be great that they just ask that question directly to Lisa-Kaindé.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm just asking if she's got the document.
Yeah, I do. Thank
Perfect.
you
Go
so
for
much, Lisa, for sharing your music with the world. It's so beautiful. My question is, on your album Ash, you had a few artists you collaborate with. And I was wondering, how did you select and recruit these collaborators? In other words, was it organic or was it an intentional process?
Yes. Oh, it's funny. It's funny that you asked this because I think, and also that you use the word organic, because I really think we always wanted it to define Ash and to define Ibeyi. We wanted it to be organic and people to understand that there's a lot of works that comes with making an album, but sometimes there's like miracles, things that happen, and that's what makes the album. And the collaborations are part of that process. I believe that a song chooses the artist, but obviously those were people we had in mind. Like, you know how you have in mind someone that one day we need to do something together. So they were in our like dreams, right? If we go back to that, they were in our dreams. But we never were like, there was not a list with the names and we tried to fit them in. It was never like that. It was, I remember we heard Deathless. We were doing Deathless, right? And then suddenly we were like, oh, we need Kamasi. It was just one of, those whispers that you get in the ears from the ancestors and your ghost around. And we're like, okay, we need to ask him. And we asked him. It was the same for Michelle and the Gonchelo, and it was the same for La Mala. it was really, really organic. And it's funny because with this one, it's so different. We are in the process of making the album now, and it's quite the same thing. We have those names running around our brains, but we're always waiting for the song to call them. And sometimes the song, they don't call those artists. And then you have to accept that it's not for this album. It will be for the next one, maybe. But it being organic is super important. Especially nowadays, when sometimes you hear music and you're like, it just doesn't work. You hear the two artists and you're like, why? And it's because there's no, like, that energy hasn't come through.
Absolutely. Thank you for that question. Chloe, do you want to jump in and ask your question?
Yeah, sure. I just thought it was really interesting, like your very multicultural background and upbringing, because I'm also can relate, like I'm French American and like moved around a lot. So I'm kind of curious, like, how you kind of connect with that idea of like living somewhere but being from somewhere else, and like what kind of connections do you make through that kind of like otherness, and but being connected to something bigger than yourself, like a culture that maybe can't be pinpointed down in one thing. I mean, you kind of already talked about it, but yeah, if you could elaborate, I guess.
I guess it's funny, what I heard when you said that is try to make home anywhere. And you will have personal things that make home, whatever they are. Mine are my shrine, mine are my friends, some people that I really have long conversation with, and actually a building. I need a house that I decorate, and my things. I need a piano, right? I realized that when I moved to London, I had a synth with me, and since I bought a real piano during quarantine, it's like the difference of me feeling at home is just night and day, because I feel like that's my place. That's where I, set roots. If I look at my house and I imagine my house, there's roots at my piano, like putting me down, not putting me down, holding me, because putting me down, it's actually the opposite, lifting me up, but touching the ground. And I guess the feeling of otherness, it's a funny thing. I talked to Richard about it, to our producer, because I always said to him that I feel like I always have a foot in and a foot out anywhere I am, anywhere, and even in countries, but also in the music industry, everywhere. I always felt like a little outsider. And he laughed because he was like, this is such an artist thing to say, because artists always feel like outsiders, but probably there's a lot of people, looking at you and thinking, you are in the music industry, you're not an outsider at all, you're in the middle of it, right? But it's interesting how we feel from the inside. And I guess there's also something beautiful in that, in being mixed, beautiful in having a foot in and a foot out. And when I now, with more distance, I realized the reason why Ibeyi could exist is because of that. If we had been 100% French or 100% Cuban, Ibeyi would have never existed. Ibeyi is the fruit of us having that distance of, being able to play, being able to make what is ours, but also mix without feeling pressure. For example, I think a lot of Cuban would have felt pressure in integrating those Yoruba songs because they're sacred. And we never felt that. We always knew that because we were singing it with so much faith and love, we could, right? And it's funny, actually we had priests coming to our shows, our first shows, everywhere in the world, and looking at us during the whole show like that, and then coming while we were signing and say, okay, we'll allow it. So it's funny how we never felt that pressure until they came, and we're like, oh my God, hopefully they don't feel that we are being disrespectful, because it's the opposite. But the reason why we felt inclined to do it we felt like we could do it, that is because of that distance. That is because of that mix. That is because of the step back. But you can have that step back even if, you know, even if you're not mixed. It's just take it. Don't be afraid to take it. And sometimes moving, you know, moving from your country helps. And sometimes going back to your country is actually what sparks it.
Really good. I think that's a really interesting point in terms of connectivity. And just on that note, April had a question about family connections. April, do you want to come online and ask that?
Yeah, of course. So I wanted to ask because in lockdown, me and my family were setting up a project, like a community interest company to sort of create alternative education streams for marginalized groups in society, whether they're like disabled or people like from mixed backgrounds or working class or whatever it may be, lots of different intersections. And like obviously working with your family, for me, it was really inspiring because I've lived away from my family for a number of years. So it was just like really, it was really nice to not be in like, say, a typical corporate environment with colleagues, but with your family and bouncing ideas off each other all the time. And obviously, as you collaborate with your twin sister and your mum's your manager, I just wondered how it aids your creative process, and like, or does it create some tension sometimes, or is it healthy tension that you could have with them that you couldn't necessarily have with other collaborators? Like, I just wanted to hear more about it and how you guys work through things and just bounce off each other and stuff.
That sounds beautiful what you're doing, and what you're creating with your family. It sounds absolutely fantastic. It is hard to create with your family. I'm not gonna lie. I'm not gonna be there and be like it's the best, but it's also the best. I have a relationship with my twin sister, and the way we see things are so opposite that when we bring those opposites together, it just works. I would not have done that on my own. I realized really early on, not recently, actually the opposite, really early on, that I would have not, you know, been a performer on my own, because I think it's nuts. But with her, it's like I'm stronger and we complete each other really well. And I guess people do that and have been doing that for years, you know, collaborating with someone else. It's just, I was born with her, basically. It's that's the difference. What is amazing is when you win with your family, and you will win and lose, you will have both. But when you win with your family, it's the best thing ever. And when you lose with your family, it's better than losing on your own. I also think, by that I mean the hard times, I prefer having hard times with them than with anyone else. One other thing that is amazing is I don't need to explain to them who I am. And when I change, I can have the conversation of me changing and saying, look, this is me now. This is me and how I see things now. I think it's harder to get to that point with someone you are just meeting, though I totally think it's possible. And if you reach that point, it's as interesting and as wonderful. Yeah, and yes, of course there's tension, but tension is positive too. I'm talking about the creative tension. It's almost like fear when you create is also an important thing. If you are creating something that scares you, you're in the right track. Being too comfortable sometimes means that you're not challenging yourself, you're not going deep enough. And I remember I was writing with a friend of mine, so it's not my family, but it's someone really close to me. And because I was close to her, I could say, you're not digging deep enough. And she ended up crying, and I felt really bad because I was like, oh my God, I've pushed her too much. But then we ended up having an incredible song because she was talking her truth. She was not hiding. And I think that's what family does to you. You can't hide. I can't hide. I can't hide in front of Naomi. She knows in a second. She can't hide. She can't hide in front of me either. So I think that's a really good thing.
And then April, you had a follow-up question that was based on an interview that Lisa did in with the New York Times. Do you want to bring that up as well?
Oh yeah, sorry, I just put my questions next to each other.
Go for it.
Yeah, I was just reading an interview with you guys in the New York Times earlier, and there was like an ending quote which I thought was really beautiful, and it said, I'm just going to quote it now: "There is a vibe, there's a culture, and there's a vibe and a culture. You go to Cuba, stand things. There are ghosts and energy everywhere." And I just kind of, I think for my final project, I'm really looking into like mixed heritages. So like my family are from India, but also from Kenya and Ireland, and all my cousins are from different Caribbean islands, and my little sister's Jamaican. And I just find the melting pot of culture and heritage so interesting. And I'm not really sure what form it's going to take yet, but I just really wanted to hear more about your experiences of forming your identity and not having to choose one thing or the other. And especially within this quote, it's like the country, the ghosts, and the energy. Like, I think that just picks on lots of really amazing points. So
at the start, it was really hard because I was a mixed race girl with a like atypical family, because it was single mom, dad never there, musician. We were twins in a French school where, you know, everybody is quite, you know, the typical French family. So it was really hard because I really thought, well, wow, I didn't win the lottery there. You know, I'm the weirdo. I'm the type of, you know, kind of people that it's hard for who it's harder. And then I would go to Cuba and I could also feel it, because I was like, oh, well, they think I won the lottery, but that also makes me like separate, because I am not 100% Cuban. And, you know, they think, oh, you great, you can come and go, you're lucky, but that also makes you separate. So it was really complicated to find who I was. Actually, it's funny, I should say everything started coming into place when I started writing, because suddenly my cultural identity was not even something I would think about. I was Lisa, the songwriter and singer, and that was my identity. That was the only thing that identified me. And slowly I understood, and actually kind of miraculously, the songs started reflecting us, right? And then you see the beauty in what you're creating and you're realizing, but this is just a reflect of who I am. And you start understanding. And then miraculous things happen. You know, right now I have these, but I have an afro normally, and my mom I used to tie it so tight. I didn't want anyone to, I wanted like long silky hair, like L'Oreal, you know, like all of those brands where they flick their hair, and I had like frizzy hair and I really didn't like it. And I almost lost my hair for like tying it up so like, you know, tight. I became literally, I had no hair here anymore. And my mom literally took me to Cuba and cut my hair in an afro, and she was like, you're gonna learn to love your hair, because I'm not letting you, you know, lose your hair on the sides. Then I was like, oh, I like my hair. You know, and little things like that. I mean, for some people, it might seem like super superficial. It's actually not. It's actually really deep to accept something that will become such part of your identity. And so I started loving my hair and started being part of my identity. And then I started reading about women. I started reading about Black women. I started singing Yoruba songs, and I started feeling them. I started feeling those women that sang those songs, you know, for years and years and years. And I started understanding the power of it, the power of culture, the power of what, you know, makes you. And, you know, it's the same. It's funny. It's the same with France. I left France. I came to London to leave. And one day I was really sick here. Well, I mean, really sick, like nothing bad. I just was coughing and fever. But you know, those moments where you feel really sorry for yourself. And I was alone in this tiny apartment. And at that time, I, you know, didn't know much people, and I missed my family. And I put on a Comédie Française, like a CD of like actors that act French Molière. And I was listening to those actors acting this French comedy, and I felt at home. And I was like, this is part of me, right? When I'm sick, this is what makes me feel at home too. And I took it and I was like, okay. So it's, you go and discover it. You go and find it.
I think that comment, it links really, really well to what Adnan has as a question. Adnan, do you want to come off mute and ask your question?
Hi.
Hi.
This is a very large question, and you tapped into how singing Yoruba helped you build a connection, and so it starts off that way, as in how has incorporating Yoruba in your songs helped you materialize a connection with your ancestry? And could you reflect on the importance of making that connection, especially for people who are further away from their ancestry, or in my case, because this is something I am always concerned with, not only for me personally, but also as to how do I pass that ancestry along, given my own struggles? So in my case, I wonder about the growing distance every generation onwards, where the slow disappearance of association, languages, and colors, and the norm in an environment dominated by a global culture.
Wow, that's a beautiful question. I can only, and also, by the way, I keep talking and I sound really certain of what I say, but I am a student too. I mean, I need to make this clear. I'm literally trying to figure it out all along the way, like all of you, and I have so much to learn. But this is what I kind of feel at the moment about that question, is that pass it on. The way you pass it on, you pass on what really touches you. The way our mom passed on Yoruba songs to us was what connected us to Yoruba songs. The fact that she took us by the hand and she said, this is, come once, but come and listen to those, because those are, I feel like those are part of me, right? And we went there and it was just obvious that they were a part of us too. I think pass on your stories, pass on your childhood stories, pass on parts of your culture that you adore, you know, part of the culture that makes you feel at home. I think that's super important. And the way, it's funny, when I was really young, I used to talk to ghosts and I wanted to see them so much and to feel them so much. And I remember like being on my bed and be like, come on, be real. And also we lost my sister and we lost our dad really young. So it was also kind of trying to reach him, right? And we lost our sister too. And so we were like, come on, reach us. And I couldn't feel them really. But I knew they were there. I was convinced. I just couldn't feel them. And the first time I sang Yoruba song, I felt them. I felt like I was tapping into that vibration. We go back to this. But I felt like suddenly I was singing to them, but I also felt like they were singing to me. We were all singing to each other. I also felt like I was honoring them. And that became a really important thing to me, is like music as a prayer, music as a way to honor yourself and others. And that connection that you get, right? Music as a way to honor people that are coming to see you, right?
Can I ask a question just on that note? Is just because I think there's it links to where you're heading. Unfortunately, Xiaoji had to leave, but she asked me to ask this question, which is, how have languages influenced your music, and do different languages carry different characteristics and powers, rhythms for your singing? And I think it was just what you're talking about. This might go quite well together.
Yes, they do. And that's also part of it. You know, you were saying, how do we pass on that? Language is super important. You know, I always joke to my mom, because I was like, thank God you taught us Spanish and French, but I wish you would have taught us English too, because then I had to learn it. And she always laughs, but because languages are so important. The way they split your brain, the way you see things differently, words that you can't find in other languages, vibrancies that you can't find in other languages, but also it opens your literally your way and your vocabulary to say things. There's things I want to say just in Spanish. There's things I can say just in Spanish. There's things I can say just in English. And so suddenly I'm allowed to do it. I feel allowed to do it. I feel able. It's not allowed. I feel able to do it and to express myself a lot more. Because I have all of those tools. And language sometimes is not just words either. Touch, you know, making things, all of those things. The more we give our children and our friends the possibility to feel able to express themselves, and the better we'll be at communicating, and the better we'll be at healing, and the better we'll be at being. I really believe in that.
That's I think that you've highlighted something incredibly important about language being a key to enable you to articulate and to access spaces. But there's Alana here asked wrote a really great question that I think will speak to that. Alana, do you want to come off mute and ask that question?
Yes, I'm here. Good morning. It's such an honor to meet you, sort of. But I have a question because it's my current research as a dancer and choreographer. The language, specifically that the Cubans, specifically the Afro-Cubans sing for the Orisha, would you call that Yoruba or some kind of hybrid? Because I know when I look, and I don't speak any African language or any other dialects, but I see some similarities and differences, but not all the time exactly the same, maybe in written, maybe I'm just, so that is basically my question, if you would call that something else.
Also, just gonna say, the language that dancers use, the body, the way you guys know how to express feeling and pain and beauty and intensity through the body is one of the most mesmerizing thing ever. So I just wanted to say that. It's just every time I meet a dancer, I'm so starstruck because I think I wish I could, probably I can, but I mean, I'll stick to, believe me, I'll stick to singing, but you know, how to express yourself through movement, it's wonderful. And what you said, yes. So when the slaves went to Cuba, were shipped to Cuba, they arrived in Cuba, they were brave enough and they kind of found syncretism in order to continue to speak their language and continue to pass on. Right? They knew, and that's the thing that is amazing. They knew how important it was to pass on that knowledge, to pass on that language, to pass on those beliefs, to pass on that culture. And so through syncretism, that happened and they passed it on. But obviously, because they didn't write it, they passed it on verbally. And so it changed, it morphed. There's part of Spanish in it. It's literally, it's funny, you know. Yes. So sometimes people come to see, I go to see my teacher, my Yoruba teacher, and I say, how do I say this? And he's like, well, there's this version and this version and this version, because different people sing it differently. So yeah, it's also, it's a word of mouth, right? It's a word of mouth. But there's still, I would still call it Yoruba because that's its roots, because that's where it belongs to. Right. And when Naomi and I went to sing in Benin years ago, it was at the start of Ìbejì, like, and we sang Yoruba in front of Yoruba people. And it was one of the most incredible things. And we were terrified because we thought, you know, what if they don't get it? What if they think, again, we suddenly were there and realized, oh my God, we're going to sing Anton Yoruba to Yoruba people. What if they feel they disrespected? You know, you never know. And they loved it. And there was like, they loved it because they felt that. And also we explained it to them. We said, you know, people in Cuba want to go to Africa. People in Cuba know that's where we come from. Afro-Cuban, no. And they were like, I remember this guy came at the end and he was like, I thought you guys didn't know. I thought you guys thought you invented it. And he was really touched by the fact that I was like, no, we know. We know. And they loved it because they felt a connection through water. Our people, you know what I mean? That's how it felt. We were, again, we belonged, right? Amazing. And it was a wonderful thing.
There's just on the base of that, I think you've spoken to something so great. Alana, thank you for that question. I think it channels into some really great examples. There are two dancers that I would recommend that people look at. A guy called Nikel Udat and a woman called Sheila Atta. And she uses the history of African movement as a form of mental well-being. For people that are out of context. Amazing work that they do, and understand the history of movement and its expression in multiple languages physically. And just on that note, I think Lisa, you're absolutely killing it with, like, there's so many things that you're bringing up that I think are so important. And I believe, correct me if I'm pronouncing this correct, is it Fee or Faye? You wrote a question. Do you want to come off mute?
Hi, how you doing?
Hi, how you doing?
I'm all right. Thank you. Yeah, my question, I guess, was regarding culture, because I think as one of many third culture kids in this conversation, I regard culture as a technology, so is language. And I was wondering if you might think in a similar way. Do you see culture as a technology? And then the follow-up question would be then, which culture have you been plugging into recently and why?
Do I see culture as a technology?
Yes.
Oh my God, I've never thought about that. Do I see culture as a technology?
Because I think that the term technology has been kind of overwritten with the assumption that regarding electronics, but technology is language, technology is pen and paper, you know, it expands the past into the future, etc. So
right.
For me, culture is kind of like a source code, which is
so as a tool, almost, you would say.
You could say
as
that, yeah,
tool.
Yeah.
I think, yeah. So then, yes, I think it is. I think it is if you want it to be. I think it is if you want it to be, and I think if you are an artist, it should definitely be one of your tools. I think it should definitely be something you draw inspiration from. It should definitely be something you tap into, because it's part of what makes you. And if you're an artist and you want to express real, you know, feelings, truthful feelings, then your culture will have to be a part of it. And then what kind of culture I've been listening at the moment? Well, to be honest, the two culture, apart from mine, which is Cuban culture, Afro-Cuban culture, and French European culture.
Yeah, those are ingrained, isn't it?
Yeah, those are ingrained. So I mean, they're part of me every single day, 24 hours per 24 hours. But apart from those two, the two ones that I've been really drawn to, I would say, is the American one, because when I discovered Nina Simone, and it's Afro-American, but my whole world just changed. And I would say the British one, because when I discovered Amy Winehouse, my whole world changed. I think it's just as simple as that. But it's funny because Amy Winehouse got a lot of inspiration from, again, Afro-American music. But those two are outside of the Afro and Latino one and the European one. Those two are my biggest ones. Because I think I fell in love with the artists.
Interesting.
Amazing. Thank you for that question. I think that's a conversation that people are having more and more nowadays regarding looking at technology in different ways, looking at religion, looking at customs, beliefs, rituals as a form of technology to either pass information or to structure the way that we live.
I'm sorry, I've never heard of that. That's why I was taken by surprise. Thank you so much for explaining it. I definitely think that all of that is important when you create. Rituals is one of the most important thing when you create, at least for me. Culture, I would say beliefs, what you believe in, all of those things that basically make you are what will define your music, because you create, or what will define your art, because you create your art. It's like your mirror, right? So all of that should be the technology you use. And actually, using is the wrong word. It should be what you embrace. It should be what makes your art, you know, more than it should be the most important tool.
I think that's a really interesting, that's a good point in terms of how you use those tools and how they even fashioned, how they're created. Chloe asked, just because I'm looking at the questions that the other questions left, Chloe asked a question around the materiality or the format. Chloe, do you want to ask that final, that last question?
I think just to make sure, like Chris, because Lisa-Kaindé is working on a new album, so we don't want
yes. Okay.
I have time. Don't worry.
Away from that, so we're gonna have to make it the last question, I think. Probably.
Okay. Do you want to go for that?
Okay. What a pressure. The last one. Okay. Yeah, I was just wondering, right now, public space has kind of gone digital with everything going on lately, and it's really affected like the cultural scene, and so I'm kind of wondering like how this has affected your field of action, as a musician. How does it affect your work? Like, how are you adapting to being so dependent on the more digital version of life?
I'm not good with digital, so I'm learning to get better with it. It has affected it, and sometimes when it affects it, it makes things get out of it that are incredible, and then other ones are less good. So it's about taking the good and then create with what you have. I have to say, then when you get to be in a studio with someone else, the concentration is different because you are so happy, because you understand how precious it is. I would always say it makes it hard because all of this time that you have to now lose on like organizing and the Zoom and the take corona test and then the come back and then the disconnect for 3 weeks because she has to go back and then she has to come back and all of that is really difficult and has a toll on your work. But somehow things get out of that. And it's funny because I don't know why I'm saying that, but anyways, I'll say it. I had a reading from a lady, and she was saying, "Ooh, this album is gonna be different from the two other. The making of the album is gonna be different, and from the two you made." And she looked at me. She was like, "Embrace it," because she knew I would be like literally like taking my hair out. But I really think things come out of it, and we get to like also make things that are unexpected and create in ways that are unexpected, and that sometimes is actually the energy we needed, something new, something challenging. I still hope, honestly, that we get to, the only one thing that I really, really don't want to die is the life. I really hope I'll be able to perform again in front of people without masks that can sing. I really, really want that. That's the one thing that really would be shitty to lose. Because there's something that happens live, when you go to see someone. And I really hope I could go and see someone perform live, because the screen is great. And I'm so grateful that we can all connect like that. But no, it's not the same.
I 100% agree. You can just never replace, especially when it comes to live music. Like, I guess with movies and I guess different forms of you can digitally kind of works, but with music, it's just never the same.
It's different.
The music and Spotify, whatever, but just getting that live, it's the whole experience is really different. And on that note, Lisa, I just want to say a massive, massive, massive thank you for your time, for your wisdom, and everything that you've contributed not only to the University of the Underground, but to society as well. And we're really grateful.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. I hope I helped in any ways. I hope it made sense. But basically, the only thing I would say is dream yourself, believe in yourself, search, because everything is within yourself. And I swear, like, this is the one thing you can do, even in lockdown, even alone, even when no one believes. You can believe and you can push yourself through, and you'll find people that believe and you'll fight for every single thing, and that's for sure. But the one thing is dream yourself and dig deep and be truthful to who you are. And you're gonna doubt all the time. I'm doubting every day. I go back home and I doubt, and I'm like, shit, I'm doing shit. Why am I doing this to myself? Like, doubt is part of also the work. Doubt is what makes you sane. So just embrace the law, but keep, you know, be cabeza dura, like we say in Cuba. Be hard head and go for it, and be dedicated to yourself.
What's that word again in Cuban? Say it again in Spanish.
Cabeza dura.
Cabeza dura.
Exactly. That's it. Actually, I do that. Cabeza dura. You need to be cabeza dura.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Lisa,
Really,
you know, we're trying to put together a Christmas song.
Yeah.
Wow.
No, but this is a real thing. Like, I don't know why you like both laughing about this. Like,
No,
Hey, Nelly, I'm not killing dreams,
it.
man.
I'm laughing because I'm really excited.
this is like, so anyway, we will get back to you on that. But like, the plan is for us to like come up with the best, amazing Christmas song, like better than Mariah Carey, you know, so we can maintain the University of the Anagram for the next years to come. You know, like if we can all come up with this amazing Christmas tune, like I'm talking to the students here, like if we can come up with this amazing Christmas tune, then that's it. Like we sorted forever, right?
That's a hard one. Christmas songs are hard. Christmas songs are hard to make because you don't want them too cheesy, but you want them cheesy enough. Like it's a hard line.
All I want for Christmas is you, Lisa-Kaindé.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, everybody, for your time. It was awesome to get to talk to all of you.
Thank you, Lisa. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Ache. Bye.
Bye.